Okay, back on.
Okay, we are all back. Mr. Seaver, you want-
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. First, on item A, board retreat, Ms. Met just informed me that I think all of you were agreeable to having the board retreat on October the 22nd. So we'll do that. 8:30, 9 o'clock, what do you prefer as far as starting time? We'll have breakfast. And
what do y'all?
tell me what you desire, 8:30 or 9?
Earlier better for me.
Earlier, okay.
8:30?
Yeah, that's
All
fine.
right, we'll start at 8:30 right here in this room. All right, item B we've already covered as far as the enrollment goes. Item C is EOC, Education Oversight Committee site visit. I was contacted a couple of months ago by Dr. Rainey Knight, who is a former superintendent in the state of South Carolina and is associated with the Education Oversight Committee. And she said that based on what happened in March of last year and us being out of school, that they wanted to select some school districts to come into and basically do a summary or an interview to find out what happened from March the 16th, what was good, what were our challenges, what were the obstacles, what did we learn from it, and take some things back to the legislature to propose that maybe would influence some better outcomes in public education in the state of South Carolina. Our site visit was last Thursday, September the 24th, whatever day that was, and they asked to see several groups. I met with them initially for about 35 minutes as the superintendent, and the next wave that came in, we had 6 of our principals that came in and spoke with them, and each group that came in was with the interviewer by themselves. None of us, the superintendent nor any of the staff, was sitting over. And what I told all our people as we put the agenda together and we invited people to come is tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. What was good? What were our challenges? What did we learn through this process? And you've heard me say this over and over, going through this pandemic and having to do some things that have definitely shaken us out of our comfort zone will make us better in the long run. And we talked about some of those things. But 6 of our principals came in. All grade levels were represented, elementary, middle, and high. And then we had 8 teachers to come in. All grade levels were represented there, elementary, middle, and high. And then the next group was our curriculum and instruction team. Next was finance, and then last but certainly not least, the technology team. We did not choose these groups. The Education Oversight Committee chose the groups of people that they wanted to talk to as far as bringing in and getting information. One of the things, I'll give you 4 of the guiding questions that I think everybody was asked, was what were the obstacles and innovations that impacted student learning during this pandemic or during the time that we were out? What was the impact on school finances, to include expenses related to the pandemic as well as potential costs for future disruptions? What are anticipated plans to mitigate lost instructional time? That's a question that everybody has been addressing. And then the last, and these weren't the only questions, these were just 4 major ones. What best practices can be gleaned from our state and from other states in the response to being out of school and having to go to a virtual environment, and then the packets and things of that nature. One of the things that we discussed in detail is what do you want to see as an Education Oversight Committee when it's all said and done? It's my understanding there were 6 to 8 other school districts that were asked to participate. To be perfectly honest, we were honored to participate, and because of the fact that they only chose so many districts. And I think one of the reasons they talked to the State Department, and they said if you want to get some vital information, you want to get some information that somebody's going to shoot straight from the hip and be honest with you, you need to go to these districts. And so I think it was an honor for us to be chosen to have them to come and visit with us. But they're going to take our district testing data. We did some testing with math and reading in our LEAP week. So they'll get some data. It won't have a school district's name attached to it. It won't have any individual students' names attached to it in any of the districts, but they'll combine the testing that took place when we did our testing early in LEAP and early in the beginning of the school year. Then we'll do some mid-year testing, and we'll do spring testing, and they'll get all that data. They'll compile it, they'll look at it, and kind of see where were we missing. Was it certain grade levels? Mr. Bledsoe brought up a good point. Kindergarten through 2, did our K through 2 students lose more than middle school students, high school students? But they'll take that and they'll share it not only with the EOC, but they'll share it with the legislature. But the other things that they talked about were, where were you, and this is a great example for our school district in Newberry County, where were you technology-wise when this thing hit? And were you prepared to put devices in all of our students' hands? And as you're well aware of, no, we weren't. But when we explained to her what we did, how we did it, and that we were now in our first year of a learning cohort of being an e-learning district, which means everybody has to have a device. And she said, so you mean to tell me that all of your children didn't have laptops in their hands, and before the beginning of this school year, y'all made that happen? And I said, yes, ma'am. And I told her obviously a large majority of it was our CARES Act funding, that combined with some of the technology funds that we had, and then we had some more CARES Act funding that we had to order more laptops because some of ours were a little bit older than we thought they were, and maybe we're not in the best condition. So I think we're still waiting for those to come in. So once they come in, we'll program them and get them out to our students. But she said that is absolutely amazing. I've been in multiple districts, and there are a lot of them that said there's no way because we couldn't get computers. And I'll give our technology crew credit. We are not a Chromebook district. I am not knocking Chromebooks, but they are a lower end price-wise, so there are a lot of school districts across the state of South Carolina that use them. And when this pandemic hit and everybody saw what was about to happen and we needed to be able to have a virtual platform, everybody started trying to order the Chromebooks, and there's still districts that don't have their Chromebooks and are 6 months up to a year before they're going to get them, and they can't do what we're doing right now. We're a Windows district. We're a Dell district. We have been for years. You pay a little bit more for the devices, but that old saying, you pay for what you get. We get 3- and 4-year warranties on those devices, and if they are under warranty and something happens, we just send it back. We get another device, and it has worked well for us. So we've been with them so long, and we have basically gotten everything that we asked for as far as those orders go. So that's kind of a short report from the Education Oversight Committee. Certainly the results that we get will be shared with us, and we will share them with you guys as well.
Mr. Superintendent, you talking about lost instructional time. Do we as a district have an overall general view of what we learned from our LEAP week when we tested to see how much
I don't think we have those results yet.
I know that individual classes matter more, but I just wonder if we had something as a general. We usually lose 10%. This year we lost 30 or.
Well, it's a little bit difficult to compare because last year we used math and this year we transitioned to iReady, which is a completely different platform. And we do have results. One thing that they cautioned us against, and Ms. Graham can speak to this much better than I can, but the company themselves said, you don't usually do these tests, and we don't recommend that you do this until you're 3 or 4 weeks into school, because it's just not a valid assessment. The kids haven't been in school. They've been just in a completely different setting. They're supposed to transition in, and it's totally goes against everything that the company, any kind of formative assessment company, recommends. However, the legislators required that we do it, so we did it. And we do have some data. It's not, by and large, what we would like to see, but it is hard to compare because we were on a different platform last year and the scores are completely different. But we're going to be doing testing in winter, and we feel like that's really going to give us a good comparison of where we started and where we're going. And I don't know if you want to speak more to that, Ms. Graham, because you've been working very closely with it.
I'll just reiterate what you said. The company was very specific about the testing environment that we should have been able to use with our students. In fact, when we did our training with our teachers, Dr. Brooks and I were on the phone, and we were saying we really just don't have time. We just have to know how to give the test. And so the company and you know, we as educators acknowledge the fact that bringing a child in during Leap Week when they had been out of school since March and putting the computer in front of them to take a test is not ideal at all. So in our conversations with the representative for the EOC, that was one of the things that the teachers brought up, and then we ended up discussing that as well. So we do have a district picture, but we're just hoping that some of those things were impactful upon the score as well.
So our scores are going to be skewed because it's a different platform. They're going to be skewed because we did it before we started school, and they're going to be skewed because of the way last year ended up. Is that a true statement?
I don't know about skewed for the platform, but I definitely think that the other two things we will have to keep in mind, and hopefully when we do test in winter, which we will, that we'll see, you know, an improvement. But I do have to say, and I have to brag on our virtual teachers and our hybrid teachers and all of those people in the school building. When we were tasked with testing these students under this very short time frame from the legislators, we were concerned that, you know, particularly with our virtual students, and those that we couldn't bring in, you know, during Leap Week, will we ever get everybody tested? You know, will that even happen? And as of last week, we had 94% of our children tested. So that is a huge kudos to our virtual teachers, our virtual administrator, our hybrid teachers, and our administrators in the building. They're the people that made that happen along with the teachers. So.
My personal opinion is it is what it is. They asked us to do it then.
That's right. Yes.
I'd like for the public to know how far behind we got. I mean, I really do think it was substantial. I wish we had a baseline to measure with, but if we had some general statement and say, usually over the summer we don't retain 10%. And, you know, I know you can't quantify it in a manner like that, but I think it would show a significant disruption, not only academically, but socially in their lives and everything else.
Well, and the nice thing is, if there is a nice thing in not maybe having the best scores, we're in great company, because it's that way across the state, across the nation.
That's why I want people to understand.
Challenges that we're speaking of, they're challenges that our districts all around us are facing too. And the nice thing about iReady, and one of the many reasons we decided to move to that platform, it creates a personalized learning path for our students. So even while they may not be in school every day right now, they can go home and they can spend as much time on that platform as they can. So it pinpoints where they are and tries to get them to where they need to be. So as much as they're willing to work on it at home, it is if the parent has internet access, that's something that can be used. And right now it's a four-letter word in my house, because I've got a third grader who lives and breathes iReady, because it's a great resource. And you know, that's one thing, while it does pain us to not have the children in school, there are things they can be doing at home if the parents, you know, will support that and ask them to do that. So.
And Dr. Carey, I would have to agree. I don't know whose decision, or if it was a collaborative decision to go to iReady, but I've already shared that with Mr. Suber. I'm like, it is wonderful, because I could immediately see with the lessons that it started my student with, I'm like, oh, we did lose ground not being in school, but we're doing the same thing. He doesn't know that his teacher doesn't say he has to do that much already every day. We're just like, as long as I can keep him going, because I thought we're catching up ground things I know he knew in March, that plus just keep going. So that has really impressed me. What an amazing tool if our parents and students will use it to help them basically catch back up.
Yes, and I have to give thanks to Dr. Brooks. She had contacts in other districts who knew about iReady and told her about it, and she looked into it, shared it with our principals, and it was a collaborative decision. And past the initial angst of doing something new in a pandemic, I feel like we definitely, it has paid off, and the proof is going to be in the pudding. So.
And let me add, LEAP funding helped pay for that, or actually pay for it, so yay.
Double yay.
The CFO,
Right.
the CFO like that.
Okay, item D under Superintendent's Report, the 2020-21 Teacher of the Year, Support Staff Employee of the Year, and the Rookie Teacher of the Year. As some of you are well aware, we normally, at the beginning of each school year, when we do our welcome back and we have our big celebration, we recognize our Teachers of the Year. Obviously, due to COVID, we were not able to do that this year, so we came up with what we thought was a grand plan to go Facebook Live and do all of that from this room and stream it to all of our schools and surprise the Teachers of the Year and the support staff employees of the year, et cetera, et cetera. And we were walking into this room about 7 or 8 minutes till 9, and we were supposed to start at 9, and the power flashed about 3 times in the city of Newberry, and it knocked out the server, and we were unable to do that, so we had to conquer and divide and jump in vehicles and go to separate schools and do the presentations live at the school, which was probably even better, but we wanted everybody to see it at the same time, but we made it happen. So I want to recognize those folks tonight and share those with you if you have not seen or heard. And I'll start with Miss Sarah Livingston, an elementary music teacher from Pomeri-Garmany and Whitmire Community School. She was Pomeri-Garmany's Teacher of the Year, and she was announced as the District Teacher of the Year for 2020-21. So we congratulate Miss Livingston. Our support staff employee of the year was Miss Shannon Burley, the school nurse at Newberry High School. I told Trish earlier or last week, right after we announced this, it could not be better fitting for one of our nurses to be named the support staff employee of the year with everything that they've got on their plates right now. So we congratulate Miss Burley. The district also announced the Rookie Teacher of the Year. This is the first year that we've done a Rookie Teacher of the Year, and it obviously is presented to someone who just completed his or her first year of teaching. And this year's Rookie Teacher of the Year was Miss Abby Nix, an art teacher at Mid Carolina Middle School. And last but certainly not least, our District Teacher of the Year runner-up was Miss Cecilia Kelly. She's a Project Lead the Way teacher at Mid Carolina Middle School. And the District Staff Employee of the Year runner-up was Miss Janet Davenport, who is also a school nurse at Mid Carolina High School. So the nurses swept the support staff in the runner-up year this year, and again, very fitting for that to occur. So we congratulate all of those folks and look forward to letting them serve in those roles and represent our school district this year. Next and last, the item E, return to school transition. Madam Chairman, at your request, you have a rough draft at your place, and it is entitled School District Newberry County 4-Day In-Person Option, Potential Phased Option Implementation. We actually, I say we, I'll be honest with you, I did some of this by myself for a couple of days before having any discussion with anybody, but in a meeting with the State Superintendent of Education about 2.5 weeks ago, and obviously she had been in conversation with some of the state legislators and the governor's office, and was encouraging people that when it was safe to do so, to try to get back to face-to-face instruction. Subsequent to that, she released, and I think this came to all of you guys, but released a memo to all the school board members in the state of South Carolina and to all the superintendents in the state of South Carolina, and it basically laid out some of the plans and some of the things or the critical needs areas or groups, if you will, that needed face-to-face instruction. I will tell you that I think that the premise of that letter was geared towards the 14 or 15 school districts that were totally virtual and weren't doing any hybrid whatsoever, but it can be interpreted in different ways. So what we have done now as a staff, we have come up with a rough draft for you to look at when and if we feel like it is safe enough to go back to some form of face-to-face learning and more than the hybrid approach that we're doing now. What would it look like? A lot of you have already seen what some of the other school districts have done. 2 or 3 of the Lexington districts put out some plans. Greenville's put one out. I'm sure a lot of districts have put different plans out. The majority of all of them are a phased-in approach. It would be very difficult to do something when you brought in all grade levels at one time. So what we give to you tonight as a rough draft would be a 4-day face-to-face learning plan, and students would be in school face-to-face on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Wednesdays would still be virtual for all students to continue to allow us to do deep disinfecting in all of our schools, but also to continue with teacher planning and professional development opportunities. We've listed 5 phases for you to consider when we are able to do this. The first focus group would be phase 1. That would be students with significant barriers to learning. This group could possibly include students with disabilities, English learners, students who are homeless, in foster care, and students who are academically delayed. Plexiglass barriers will be mandated for all students in non-socially distanced classrooms. And as I go through these things, I'm not going to read the same sentences over and over, but one of the stipulations in the memo that came out from the State Superintendent of Education, and one of the stipulations that she talked to us at the Superintendent's Symposium about, was that if we're going to bring people back in and you're not going to be able to properly social distance, DHEC is highly recommending that the use of plexiglass, because that is not a foolproof method, but it is just another barrier if I'm wearing the mask at the same time and I am either, there's a plexiglass shield, and we'll talk to you a little bit about those, that will sit on the desk, or if there's a table, there's a 4-way shield where there would be plexiglass, but there would also, the mask would still be on as well. And if you can't properly socially distance, in other words, if you can't be at least 6 feet apart, then I think what, and Trish, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think what DHEC is telling us right now, that if you're 3 feet, between that 3 feet and 6 foot barrier, if you've got the plexiglass and the mask, that it's very possible that you would not be labeled as a close contact. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Possible. So there's
Right.
still that opportunity when we investigate with DHEC, they would say, so there is that.
Right.
That's another barrier.
And on all of these, the implementation guideline or timeline is going to be determined, because that is certainly going to be determined with the disease activity and when we get ready to go down this road as far as phasing these things in. The second phase, the focus group there, would be students in grades pre-K through 2. Go back to what Mr. Bledsoe said a minute ago. Without a doubt, these are early learners. They learn probably as much or more in their pre-K through 2 years than they do for many years to follow. So it is important that we get them back into school and do some things with them as we bring them back, and especially in the areas where they may have some needs improvement. These younger students are not mandated to change classes. Therefore, they're not mitigating potential spread. We're mitigating potential spread of the COVID-19 virus. Again, the plexiglass barriers would also need to be in place there, but the lack of them having to change classes on a regular basis makes it, in our opinion, much safer for them to come, as opposed to people or students that are changing classes. Timeline to be determined. Phase 3 would be basically the same, but students in grades 3 through 5. Again, they do not change classes on a regular basis, so proper social distancing would be challenging if they started moving around. Our middle school students participate in extracurricular activities, and when we go to phase 4 and phase 5 with the middle school and the high school students, they're changing classes. That is very hard for us to adhere to social distancing, whether it's in the hallways or going from class to class. So in phase 4 and phase 5, we would wait and do those last and take a little bit longer to bring them back together. Anytime we put more kids in the classroom, we're going to have more of a problem being able to social distance. And I mean, that's a given fact, and that's something that will play into it. The notes at the bottom, depending upon disease activity, there could potentially be a multi-phase implementation of phases 1 and 2. And then that second bullet, all phases are conditional of the availability of all PPE required by DHEC and the State Department, such as masks, gloves, nurses' gowns, hand sanitizer, and all of that. Right now, we've got a good stock of that. We just ordered a second wave of the things that we need, so we feel good about that for the short term, depending upon how long we have to stay in this pandemic situation and how long we have to disinfect, how long we have to wear masks, how long we have to have all these gowns and the disinfectants. At some point in time, there could become a shortage of that, but at this point in time, right now, we're pretty accessible to getting what we need. The next bullet on the second page, Newberry 1 students are committed to virtual learning until the end of first semester, which is January the 21st, 2021. Newberry 1 students may apply for face-to-face learning once we come back on a space-available basis after the end of first semester. And the last bullet there is that hybrid students may not choose Newberry 1 during this phased approach unless there is space available. So space available is key, because when you start going above and beyond space available, especially in the Newberry 1 situation, we've got middle school grades right now that are already capped, and those numbers are high as far as the teacher-student ratio. So we can't go any higher, because what would happen is we would have to start moving teachers again, and that's not something that we want to do in the middle of the year unless we're going back into the classroom, and the numbers in Newberry 1 are and I'm not saying the numbers in Newberry 1 wouldn't diminish. They may, some of them may want to come back, but obviously they're in Newberry 1 for a reason, because their parents didn't want them in a hybrid situation. So some of those parents are probably not going to want to put them into a situation where we're going back face-to-face 4 days a week as well. The second part of this is the 4-day in-person options and considerations for implementation. I had pros and cons, but I just like to use the word opportunities and challenges, because I think we do have some opportunities here. Going back would address the immediate needs of those students with significant barriers to learning, providing face-to-face instruction for those who need it the most, such as pre-K through 5 SPED and English learners. Third bullet, virtual Wednesdays will allow teacher planning and collaboration, and enables Newberry 1 and face-to-face teachers to work together to pace their lessons. Virtual Wednesdays allow professional development for teachers to extend their knowledge regarding Schoology and other online platforms. Virtual Wednesdays also allow for our related arts teachers to continue providing the lessons that they're providing to our Newberry 1 students on Wednesdays. Virtual Wednesdays would also allow the entire district to continue with deep disinfecting of all schools in a timely manner. Excuse me. Wednesdays would also allow our school nurses to follow up on COVID-19 issues and complete all the documentation and communication that is required by DHEC and the school district. And last and certainly not least, we do understand and we do agree that face-to-face instruction is the most effective method of teaching and learning for a large majority of our students. It is our collective responsibility to provide a safe learning environment for all involved as we implement this phased approach to face-to-face learning. So what would be our challenges as we move back to a 4-day in the classroom environment? Increased risk of exposure in all areas, as social distancing would not be possible to maintain in all areas. Any face-to-face transition will be dependent upon the availability of plexiglass barriers for all students in non-socially distanced classrooms. The use of plexiglass does not guarantee that a student may not be identified as a close contact. Access to all PPE must be maintained to continue a face-to-face model. And in the last round, and we actually finalized this on Friday and sent it in, and based on the email that I read right before I came in here, we got some correspondence from the State Procurement Office that looks like everything that we ordered we're going to get right now. I just don't know what the timeline is, but we did order a large amount of plexiglass that would work for elementary students, and then it is a different trifold type of plexiglass that we would use with our middle and high school students. But what I'm hearing is, or seeing and reading in this email, is that we're going to get all that, and I'll get a timeline for you. I just don't know the timeline as to when that plexiglass is going to be available. The third bullet there is mask breaks may not be allowed in classrooms that are not socially distanced, so we would have to do our mask breaks by taking students outside, because if we take a mask break in the classroom and we're not socially distanced, then if there is a positive, everybody that was around that student is a direct contact, and they're going to be out longer than the person that tested positive. The fourth bullet, increased potential for more exposure to COVID-19, which may lead to more positive cases. Our nurses will be challenged, as they are right now, to investigate, contact trace, notify parents, file DHET reports, and safely see students in the health room. Teacher and staff absences may substantially increase due to the sickness, exposure, close contact, household exposure, positive cases, etc. Locating substitute teachers is already a challenge and becoming more of a challenge for us, and it will increase as the positive cases are confirmed. Student transportation, and Dr. Hunter, we've already alluded to this a little bit, those numbers will increase. Any bus driver shortages will result in buses at a maximum capacity of 67%, and the possibility of double routing buses will be a result of some students being late for school each day. And last, child nutrition plans / strategies may have to be modified to provide a socially distanced method of providing breakfast and lunch, especially in middle schools and high schools. If we can't social distance in a cafeteria, it's going to be very difficult to feed students in a cafeteria, and we may have to monitor and adjust what we are doing. The one thing that I would caution you about, and I don't mean this to sound as a negative, but I think the last thing we want to do is start these phases too early, which may result in us having to revert back to what we're doing now or going even further back. And I think not only is that going to be a major frustration and concern for our staff and our students, but the very parents that want us to do this are going to be very, very concerned if we get into this 3-4 weeks deep and we start having all kind of positive cases, because the bottom line is the point in time could possibly come where we're having to shut down certain classrooms, and I would assume, and I don't know that we've gotten this from DHEC yet in writing, but when you get to a certain percent of flu cases, they consider shutting down certain grade levels or schools. I don't know that we're there yet. I'm not saying that we would get there, but that is something that could possibly happen. So we need to take all that into consideration. So as we safely transition, it would certainly be our recommendation that hopefully our metrics could get back down in that medium range before we do so. Right now, as Nurse Trish has already shared with you, we're third highest in the state in that left-hand column and 10th highest in the state in that right-hand column. But certainly these are the phases that we would look at. I open the floor to any questions and discussion that you might want to have about this rough draft. Be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I don't really have a question, but I've had several folks call me today, email me today. One happened to be a virtual parent, one happened to be a hybrid parent, one was a staff member in our district. And I had already had the thought, and so I just ran it by them, and I was delighted when Ms. Hamilton said the idea about a survey. I think at this point I would like to see us develop a really good survey that goes to our parents, the hybrid parents, to get a feel for how many parents that have chosen hybrid would really like for their children to be back in school 4 days a week. I think the more information we give them in the survey, just like those little bullets down there, the challenges, because I think they know the opportunities. They know that they feel like their children would just socially, emotionally, academically be so much better to be back in school. But I think they need to understand that you know, your first grader is going to be sitting behind plexiglass with a face mask, won't be able to have a mask break, the buses, just all the details, so that they make a very educated, wise decision, just to give us some feedback. What are they thinking overall? And then I certainly think that the survey should go to our virtual parents as well, just to see how many virtual parents would, oh gosh, if they're going back 5 days a week, I would really like for my child to be able to, or 4 days, go back. Virtual's not working so well for us. Or do we have hybrid parents that are like, I'm okay hybrid, but when you're talking about not being able to socially distance, maybe I don't want that option. I know we didn't want a lot of movement back and forth, but I just think if we're really going to look at the needs of our students and our families, we need to get some kind of feedback on what kind of movement we might have the need for.
And I think-
Does that make sense?
I think a survey would serve a dual purpose as well. It would also tell you what kind of numbers you're looking at, and we may have 25 leave virtual and go to hybrid or 4 days, and we may have 25 that want to go back virtual. And that would alleviate, in a perfect scenario, moving teachers. If we're indeed going to continue
Right.
virtual.
And that's what I was thinking too, Mr. Ham. In some cases, it might, hey, there's not space, but if they're just kind of switching spots,
Now, obviously,
then you got.
You got to do the same grade level.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's a million
the
details.
chances of it doing all of that is not real good, but at least you would know.
Right, that's what I was thinking. You're right, Ms. Dowd. It's got to be a perfect, and it's not perfect, but it would give us some knowledge. We could see what it's looking like, see what the families, the parents, what they're thinking. I mean, that's what I would like to see us do.
We had the same conversation as a staff this morning, so we're certainly not opposed to the survey. But, again, we'll have to talk as to exactly what the timeline would be. I want us to be very careful. We can send 2 surveys out, but I want us to be very careful to committing to the swapping.
Wouldn't be any
because
commitment, it'd be asking questions.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm just talking about after the survey comes in, because we have been clear from day one that when we chose to go virtual, you chose to go virtual for a semester. So I think that we need to walk before we run.
Oh, I agree, and the virtual parent I talked to understood that very well, that it was a one-semester
That would be
commitment.
a December survey, that wouldn't go out before that.
Well,
I would-
the survey could go out before then, but
Yeah.
I mean, and we can certainly talk about that, but I think the initial survey in my mind would be to the hybrid parents who already have their children in brick and mortar, and we get those numbers to know what we can do with that second survey. But I don't know what the rest of y'all think. I mean, we don't have to make that decision today, but we definitely agree that we need to do the surveys to both groups. Definitely agree.
The question I had today from a concerned parent, what's the number? What's it going to take for us to get back to school? And I don't have a crystal ball. Nurse Owens, do you have one?
No,
Can
I
you give us a comfort number? I don't know that we can do that, but that question was point blank asking me, well, what's it going to take? What's the number that would convince you to go back to school? And I couldn't answer it. I don't know.
No, and I wish I did have a crystal ball. I think when we look and we're trending down and our disease activity is trending towards the low range, and we're having tests that we can do on a daily or every other day basis so we can have a handle on it and quarantine the people who are asymptomatic, I think that, and we're getting there. I mean, I think the tests and things are coming, and we're already having some. So for me, I don't have the magic number, but I think when we're looking at the data and what we're seeing in the community trending lower.
Well, I think it's important to understand that we were going in the right direction.
Right.
In fact, you and I talked about that on our email. We're going in the right direction, yay. We started back to school and the numbers went back up.
Well, and Labor Day
Now,
happened.
was that Labor Day? Was that start of school? I don't know.
I think it was a combination, Mr. Ham, of all the above. We also got athletic teams that have come back into competition. There are issues across this state with that right now. There are regions that are having to move their conference schedule and wait a couple of weeks before they can play, and that's happening all over the place. You see it in the papers just like I do. So those things are, again, the more people we bring into an environment, the more chance that some of that is going to happen. I mean, that's just a given. I don't know that we can dispute that.
And the athletic people aren't going to like this, but I'm concerned that we're doing athletics and it's hurting our academic time. I'm all for athletics, but you can't social distance on the football field. You can't do it. You can't do that in practice. So I know we're trying, but I just, we've got to make sure that we understand that academics is, in my mind, first and foremost.
And do we know, when did Newberry College start back this fall?
When did they start?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that the college and the college students, that may be causing some of our county disease numbers to go up as well.
I'm not 100% sure, but if I'm not mistaken, I think they came back in phases. I know they did. I just don't know how many different phases they had as to what students were coming when. I have no idea.
And I do believe that some of those positives will be reported back to the counties that they live in.
Yeah.
Versus.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had heard that. It's like, they're in this county if they happen to be infected, but yet, I'd heard that from a parent of a college student that.
My thinking is a lot more aggressive. I'd like to move phase 2 up to phase 1. I'd like to implement it at the beginning of the second 9 weeks. Just put it out there. I think we're ready for it. I think the probability of children getting sick is practically nothing. I think we put in enough implementation. I've seen things enough now to make me think we can pull it off and do it.
We certainly can take that into consideration. I think that before we do anything, we do need to go ahead and send that survey out and see what kind of results we get.
I'm mixed about survey. It's like Quinn said, if you ask the right questions and you set it up, maybe it'll work, but so far it hasn't been too dependable.
Well, I would like to see maybe a little bit more input, whether it's from some of maybe the members of the School Improvement Council, or whether when we have our work session to be able to come down, to make sure that the questions are very specific, and then also for the listening the challenges and making sure that that if we do move ahead, that parents do understand what the challenges are and what the what may happen because of that. And
we can do that through our focus groups. I mean, we can do the same thing we did before those surveys. I mean, the school.
Yeah, I'd like to see it done a little bit different than the way that the original focus groups, because it wasn't, in my opinion, done across the board the same. It just depended on whatever school and how a principal set it up as to how the focus group happened. Some of them did them through School Improvement Council, some of them did them through their teachers. Where the School Improvement Council, because they are parents, and they are, most of the time, most of those people are involved in the community and get out, and so I'd like to see a little bit more input that way.
We can have some of that conversation. I don't have a problem. And so I think some of them did use, honestly, I don't know how many of them use their school improvement councils and how many of them use.
Right. Well, I mean, I heard, during that time, I mean, it was a lot of feedback, and this school said they did it this way, this school said they did it that way. Some parents said, well, down in this area, the parents had more of an input through the school improvement than others were like, well,
Given technology, it shouldn't be a problem to involve get input from every parent.
Right.
Every parent that would like to give us input.
Right, yeah.
No, I was just talking about not for the just questions, that when we put the questions, like Mr. Bledsoe said, that, I feel like we need to make sure there's specific questions and spell it out, and so that, the parents have a good, clear idea of what it is that they're answering and what the outcome of it's going to be.
They need to fully understand the facts, to me, of their choice, so that they don't, come back later and, I didn't understand that.
Well, much like the
Just-
virtual people, a lot of them thought that they would be given assignments and they could do those virtually at their own pace, and that's not the way I understand that too. So.
And I do go back to what Quinn said earlier. I would like for us to, with this survey, decide, we want to make sure we've heard from this many of our parents, and if not, that's where, teachers can, especially now, because you can reach out with the hybrid students online and the virtual, hey, we haven't heard, make sure you respond to the survey, because it's just important for me to really try to get as many.
Yeah, with all the devices that we have put in people's hands, we definitely should get a
Right, yeah.
survey-wise.
That's what I was thinking, because
shouldn't
we
be
can
a-
reach out when we're missing somebody to, hey, don't forget to.
Yeah. And then, because, I know that the time's going to come, and when we do, go into the phase, I'd agree with Mr. Bledsoe as far as that phase 2 and phase 1, could be implemented at the same time.
I have no problem with that. I fully agree with that.
I'm just afraid if we keep talking, we're going to really suffer from these children, especially K through 2. what I've seen them trying to retain.
All right. Well, we've got a leadership team meeting tomorrow, so we'll have some of this discussion, and I'm sure a lot of them are listening right now, but we'll have this discussion with our principals and talk about those focus groups and how that needs to be done, and make sure that we get a wide variety or a broad spectrum of opinions from parents and stakeholders across the board. That's what we need.
Well, I understand the younger kids coming first, I get it. Another group that we can't forget about either is the junior and seniors, because they don't have an infinite amount of time to make up. So I don't know how we could move them up in the whole process, but I mean, they're on a time crunch. Their graduation's coming.
But they've adjusted so much better to the block schedule.
And then they're leaving to go to college.
That's right. So
we don't want to send them off to college behind either. So.
Well, the majority of those secondary students are technologically savvy. They are not the ones that are struggling greatly with being able to connect, and their teachers and administrators are reaching out to them. That's one of the reasons, and I'm not going to copy what somebody else does, but I don't know that I've seen any district that has put the 9 through 12 students before the early learners.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and the other thing, Mr. Suber, is that when that time comes, and I had spoken with you earlier, is that, that one of the concerns that I'm hearing from teachers, in the district is that we give them, ample time to be able to make that change and to make whatever adjustments that they have to, because, not that it's anybody's fault, but, we started off very quick, and a lot of them still feel like that they're still trying to get their feet on the ground.
All right, well, that's why that was the first thing I shared with you. The first note on this draft is that all phased options listed below require a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks notice prior to actual implementation. In other words, parents will know it, teachers will know it. If you think that 2 to 3 week notice is not enough, if you want that to be 3 to 4 or 4 to 5, you just tell us what it needs to be. But we think a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks, so everybody fully understands, because it's going to involve transportation, it involves the amount of food we're ordering. I mean, it may involve having to move some teachers around. This is not going to be a simple process as everybody thinks it is. It's going to be very complicated.
I knew it wasn't. That's why I said you got 4.5 weeks. We knew that was the ball we could shoot for. I think we can make it happen. But I'm afraid if we talk it to death, we're going to get to the semester break, and then we have a whole new ball game. We don't know what we're going to do with everybody start over. So that is a big concern for me. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, 100% of the people that talk to me, and people call me all over the county and try to identify themselves, and I don't know them, but they said, you speak for us. We want to get back to school. And I really believe they do.
Yeah. Because most of the calls that I got today was about, get our children back in school. 4 days, at least 4 days, because our children are hurting.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge for everybody, no doubt about it.
And I would agree. Like I said, I've had a little of both today, but the majority of mine today also were the 5 days. And that was part of the reason I'm like, we need to go on right now and start doing what we need to do, planning, thinking, surveying, because I knew it's not an easy process. There are a lot of details, and I just think for our teachers especially, they had so much at the beginning of this school year that's why I'm like, as we joked and said we were building the plane while we flew it. This time I want us to try to have that plane built as much as we can before we have to take off.
We might still be reading the directions, but it'll be...
Right, yeah, that's right. I didn't say it's going to be perfect, but at least, a little more. So that was why I'm like, I think we need to get started. Like Mr. Bledsoe says, we don't need to talk. We need some, let's move forward action to figure out what we need to do, and, what would that implementation timeline look like, And that, to me, that would be a question I would ask the parents. Like right now it's high. Do you feel like it needs to be medium across the board, or like Ms. Ulch said, do we want parents to feel like they want to wait till it's low? Mm-hmm. Just, get their feedback in my thinking on every detail. Mm-hmm.
So I think first and foremost is to do the surveys and to get the focus groups and get some opinions, obviously, from our parents and people in the community. And from, again, I think our students need to weigh in as well. We can have the principals, do a survey with their students, and, I mean, they can do individual surveys as well. Mr. Curry?
I do think it is important for us to listen to Ms. Oach and our CDC directors as well. Even though we want to listen to parents and their concerns, I understand that, but we also have to listen to the professionals who's doing this work every day. I think if a person is voicing a concern, we need to listen. Most times people voice concerns and we don't listen to them, and we end up in a mess. The second point I would like to make, when I read this 4-day in-person options for implementations, when I look at opportunities, even though there are 8 listed opportunities and 8 challenges, I only see 2 opportunities on this list. And the first one is for the student with learning barriers being back in school, and the second one is provide face-to-face instruction for those who need it the most, such as P2K, SPED, and ELA students. But then when I look at challenges, all 8 of those are challenges facing these students. So that the students only have 2 opportunities. When you look at the opportunities, everything else is teacher planning, related art teachers, COVID issues. None of those things deal with students, in particular when you look at the opportunities. Students only have 2 opportunities. When you look at the challenges, there are 8 challenges facing these students. When you read it. It's right there in front of you. They only have 2 opportunities and 8 challenges. I think it's important for us to understand that when we talk about we want to serve students and that we love students and everything student focused, my biggest thing is when you read it, the students only have 2 opportunities, but they have 8 challenges, which means there is going to be some challenges moving forward with this plan. So I want you all to read it, take some time with it, and digest it.
I don't see it like that. I see the opportunities greatly for the children. If you take care of the teachers, the children benefit greatly. And so I think the teachers are the ones we're asking to really take a little risk, because the children have actually no risk of dying or getting sick from this disease. So I think it's important to let the teachers know we're going to do everything we can to accommodate them for what we're asking them to do.
And dealing with the COVID issues is that's an opportunity that's going to directly affect the children as well.
Absolutely.
If Nurse Ulch and her nurses have opportunity to do everything right with your contact tracing, it's going to help the student as well. So that's why it's listed. I'm assuming that's why it's listed as an opportunity.
Yeah, and one of the other things, and I realized this as we were talking just a minute ago and totally left it off, one of the opportunities that I left off, and I take full responsibility for it not being on there, but it is the social emotional learning that will take place and the social emotional support that our students need and get from teachers and guidance counselors, etc., every day. So I should have put that one in there, but that definitely is an opportunity that would be there as well when we come back for 4 days of instruction.
And I understand what Mr. Curtin was saying, and that's why I would really like for us to make sure we list those challenges in some way in that survey to parents for them to consider all of that. But for me, I know it's just one bullet, provides face-to-face instruction. But to me, as a public educator, we are charged to educate our children. And if a family chose public education, you're assuming that your child goes to school 5 days a week. In many of our cases, it's 2 parents at work. So this is very problematic. So the children are going to learn more. They're going to get more instruction 5 days a week. To me, that's just huge. But then again, we want to be safe. We don't want an outbreak of COVID if we can help it. So we're going to definitely have to have our plexiglass all delivered and in place. One parent that called me today, and I hadn't really thought about this, their student is hybrid because both parents work. The days that their child's not in school, they're in a program with I won't name the place in Newberry, but it's a very nice place. But as she was pointing out, the hybrid days, yes, their child is socially distanced, But the 3 days that they're not at school, they are with all these other kids that aren't coming just from their school campus, they're coming from all over the school district. They're not socially distanced there. So we already have children, even in the hybrid nature, it's not like we're keeping them socially distanced all the time.
Yeah.
Does that make
Can't
sense?
be with them 24 hours a day.
They're going to
That part, we
the
can't
YMCA, or they're going to this program or that program, or to a daycare or nursery, because people are having to help them with those 3 days of instruction, and they are not.
And I would
Socially
say,
distanced
just
there.
to speak to that, I would say that's probably even more reason to, and more important for us to make sure we're socially distanced, because you're right, when they're outside other places, we can't control that, but then, when they come to us, we want to try to control any spread to others as we can. And as we said in the very beginning, we can't eliminate all risk. We can mitigate it, but we can't eliminate all of it. And with being in that high disease activity, and like you said, with them being in other places, I just think it's even more reason for us to maintain that social distance.
I'm just going to add to that. I also had a parent, and I believe that parent probably talked to several other board members, where she shared that in her particular case, her child, each day, because there was only so much room in daycares, that child is at 3 different daycares from the time that they're not in school. And so she felt like that her child, in her particular case, would be much better off in a school where it's just the same set of kids in the same environment, rather than every day taking that child to a different daycare, because she realizes too that she's exposing her child more to, and then coming into the school. And so that was her thing of rather having them just having that child just in one place, and she felt like that she's not the only one probably in that situation, which would kind of be like what you said, that when they're in daycare all those other days, and if they're not social distancing, that at least if we've got something in place, like our not that it's 100%, but having the plexiglass in place, having the mask in place, and then especially in the elementary age, they're not moving in the halls like our middle school and high school would. And so, I mean, who's to say that maybe they wouldn't be safer in one particular area? But again, we've got to take our teachers into account too.
Absolutely.
And that's why I say that it's a good start of being able to have this plan, for us to be able to go home, digest it, as Mr. Curitan said, and do the surveys like you said, and be able to come up with a plan, because everybody's goal is to get all the kids back in school. I mean, really the hybrid doesn't work for anybody, and the virtual doesn't really work. I mean, it works for very few. I won't say anybody, but it takes a parent that has got the time and the energy and the dedication, and for some of them they have the dedication, but they don't have the time and they don't have the energy by the time they finish working. And then you've got parents that are working 2 jobs, and and then you got grandparents who hadn't been in school in a long time, and so I mean, this is all brand new to them too. And so I mean, it's like you said, it's a lot of moving parts, but I think it's a good start that we're discussing it, figuring out how we can make it work, and try to make it work, as quickly as we can.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
Just kudos to the fact that y'all have already started on such a plan, and everything that y'all are doing every day to protect the kids. Appreciate y'all.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Got a great staff, great principals, great teachers, great nurses, great students. It's one team, and we're going to make it happen. All right, so we'll go ahead and start drafting a couple of surveys, and we'll have some conversation with our principals tomorrow about them working with their focus groups and what those focus groups look like, and try to be consistent across the board as to what groups we're using. And do you have any other questions, Madam Chairman?
Sounds like a timeline that's going to be several months away. We probably won't do anything this whole semester then, will we? Do y'all think that? I mean, the surveys now, I'm just wanting the people in the county to understand this. Right now, we're just talking the talk, aren't we? Really? Has anybody got any idea of how long the survey will take and when you'll make a decision from it?
I think the turnaround time on the survey, I mean, I'm not going to tell you it's going to turn around in a day or two, but I think we can get the survey together and get it out. I mean,
I said, well, that could be done in 10 days or so.
I would think we can. Let us meet, let us talk about it, but I think we can do it.
And we can always, I'm going to speak out of turn,
No,
we
you're
can
right.
always have
Right.
a called meeting if we need to take action.
That's what I was thinking as well, yeah. I mean, I'm certainly willing, and I'm sure we all are willing to have a call meeting if we need to move forward. So, yeah, I think, I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to get this survey out and at least, you know.
And Nurse Schultz assures us that the numbers are going to come down next week.
It's not for lack of praying, let me just tell you.
Mr. Suber, is there a way too that when we do this, put this survey together, that we can send it out also to our teachers?
Sure.
Okay.
We
You
send
know,
out-
just, I mean,
we
that
send out
way
a
everybody
survey.
sort of has an input.
Absolutely.
Because
The teachers will get a survey too. They certainly have a voice. Teachers and administrators. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? All right. That concludes my report, Madam Chairman.
I'm sorry, Ms. Reader was talking to me. I didn't hear what you said.
I said that concludes my report.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Ball's in your court.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion for us to go into executive session?
Move.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.